Choco, you want to bring up the topic that I have been waiting for all these meetups because that's the only topic I have at least some experience to add to. So and that is the topic that I guess tech writers discuss when they get drunk. Of like, how do we upload part of our job to developers, and so they don't notice and stay happy, and we're happy, and everybody is happy. Is it what your presentation about, or am I just overselling it?
It's it's basically like that, like how to get them on board. So we can actually contribute collaboratively.
Mm-hmm. And I guess so. Everybody can welcome Choco, and I don't have deep knowledge about the company you're working for.
Oh yeah, I actually just started. It's called Curity, and it develops. It's quite related to API security actually. It develops identity management server, and the company is the main organizer of Nordic API Forum as well. So basically, every year they have a conference in Stockholm regarding APIs.
That is cool. So I googled the website and I streamed it. Do you want to start? Do you want to start your presentation?
Okay, great. So actually, the topic today is my story of collaborating with the devs. But I would like to start it with a question: can any dev write tech docs? Actually, basically, this question has been answered by two of you previously. Apparently, any dev can. I believe so as well. That's why I want to share my story. So I want to get more devs on board because I really believe, truly believe, this is a collaboration that we need to make the collaboration, give it more efforts so we can actually make a better user experience together. So let's start. I think I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, this is me. As Ula already introduced me a lot. So basically, my name is Chen Lu. I'm from China. Lu is my last name, but most of my friends and colleagues call me Choco because apparently I love chocolate, and I'm really a full-time content enthusiast. I just love content. I mean, it's so fascinating how the communication of content can have so much different impact depending on the way of the communication. I also volunteer at Red Dogs, as Ola mentioned, and Pin Programming in Stockholm. Pin Programming is an organization, nonprofit, to help more women to get knowledge and skill about IT and get them started in the IT field. So we have free workshops, basically monthly, and recently they are going to start online workshop due to the circumstances. And then let's start. So I don't know if you have read this statement before. Like, of course, everyone can write because we are educated, we are literate, but you don't read everything that others write, right? Why it's like that? The reason I think is because writing is never just writing. You don't write. You actually design the words. You design the communication. I believe developers, they are subject matter experts. You are so knowledgeable about the product, the system, and the service. Your writing actually is really tremendous valuable for tech writers as input for us to get to know more about the product and to get more accurate information. But sometimes it's just a little bit too valuable for the end users, the users of the product to digest. Why is that? Because the developers, as you mentioned, they write API docs because API docs are facing developers. Developers also write, for example, system specs. So they are facing another technical audience. So basically, they would mention more about the function, the feature, But for audience like you and me in daily life, we would like to know how to use the product besides knowing what it does. So how we can make use of such expertise or from developers. That's how I started my collaboration with them. I noticed that this is really a great strength I would like to have in my working process. But I need to transforming the writing, just writing to design the words. So basically, during the whole collaboration, I try to mention users and context all the time when I interview developers for features, and also try to help them understand the pain of users, frustrations with users, and of course, but I think the collaboration is bi-directional, is two ways. So, I mean, developers, they have knowledge about the products, and we may know about users. We may know how to engineer the words and visualization to help users to use the products. So, sometimes I would try to start like workshops or meetings to exchange knowledge, or maybe you don't have to start big. You can just send out email with useful links about writing to your developers. So basically, I sometimes send emails like spam mail. So because I just really love sharing the information. I want everyone to get on board on contributing to the content. But besides that, we don't just design the content for communication. You would also want to design the content in line with your corporate brand, right? So engineers, developers, they also need to be familiar with the style. That happened during the review process, well, in your feedback given to them. So it's like one by one, you start getting them on board. You starting get them trained for writing for your users. But maybe it's not as fun as coding. So how do we encourage them to do it all the time? Is to try to advocate the importance of content. They are actually the same as code for user experience. Imagine you have a very crappy log information and you don't know what happened to the system. That's the information you want to get it right. So, I mean, content is not just about instructions, it's everywhere. Like users use your product in textual, in audible, in visual. But again, I mean, it's not coding. So we want it. We want them to be on board. We want it to be convenient for developers. That's why I actually also try to start a little bit similar way, like a docs like code, to provide the same environment for coding. That's why I got so intrigued by Lola's talk. Like we need to provide the same place. You don't have to leave your editor. You can stay there and just add content right there for documentation. And of course, then everyone needs to have feedback. But I think most positive feedback are more encouraging than negative feedback. So I would like to use that quite often. And also like developers, as you own experience as well, like you are quite busy, so you don't want to spend time explaining the product all the time, what the feature is. So that's why, I mean, as tech writer myself, I try to train myself as technical as developers, so we can speak on the same wavelengths. There's no time could be wasted in explaining concepts. But again, maybe they are not quite enough. So I always share my candies with them. So I mean, that's how we can get the whole process started with some sweets. Yeah, so that's actually my story about how I can get developers on board and start collaborating with me.
And
So I mean, that's why I said in the beginning, I believe any dev can write as long as they can think of users and their use context. Apparently, Google believes it too. So Google rolled out a free course for tech for engineers about tech writing recently. I guess you guys know that already. So that's it. Thanks.
Did you measure conversion from not willing to write the code, write the docs, to actually giving up and saying, yes, actually writing docs is fun? Using your methods, what is the conversion?
Yeah, I think the conversion rate is not great, but there is a number, like, so there are developers on board, and he or she can think of users even when they develop develop the feature. For example, if the whole installation is very convenient. I mean, it's not only about the instruction itself; it's the process as well, the whole user experience. So we have developers also think about reusability of your content, so we don't waste the space in repository.
Felix, Lorna, would you share your experiences?
It's difficult for me because I am the developer that loved to write documentation. I don't understand why someone would want to build something, but then leave it in such a state that no one else can use it. Like, just don't even build it in the first place. It'd save everybody some time. And
it's
so
job security. Nobody else can work on it.
Well, yes and no. I've inherited a lot. I did consultancy for a long time. I've rescued quite a lot of those projects. No, I think we're loads. I love the tip about the sweets, by the way. Like, there were lots of very good professional tips, and the one with the food will also go at least as far. I thought that was really good. And I also wanted to circle back on, you commented on me saying for them to use familiar tools, and I liked your point about having it in the same repo and kind of expecting it. You wouldn't make a code change without tests, so why aren't the docs updated? And I think the way that you bring that together as being good practice for developers is a really, not even a good way to sell it, it's a good way to describe what a 10 times developer looks like.
Yeah, and then the next step, if you can get there, is to convince your developers that documentation is part of the definition of done. So they're not allowed to merge anything that is not documented.
Yeah.
It's a long way to go, but if you get there, you're in a really good territory, because then you start it as a habit and everybody will start doing it.
That is very important. Yeah.
I think there is a middle ground there, though, because things can get stuck. So although it can be this must be done before it's considered complete, I think there's then a lot of time, and it sounds like, Choco, you have this already in mind, a lot of supporting to do to help people to complete it, and then hopefully over time they grow more independent.
And I mean, Felix, what you proposed, actually, I mean, it's obvious. Like, if they don't want to do something, well, force them. So, and obviously that's why it's discussed quite often that, test-driven development, that until you wrote a test, you cannot commit the code. Docs-driven development, until you completed your docs, you cannot commit the code. And all the other restrictions, and then developers are like, I mean, I give up. Do you want my code, or do you need anything else? Or the velocity, let's. So basically
I wouldn't call it forcing, it's more training people to good habits. Because what I think happens is, after a certain amount of time, the same as test-driven development with documenting before committing, people get in the habit of writing documentation, and then they see actually a value in it. So you're not forcing it, you're just nudging them.
Yeah. And I'm not devaluing documentation, like that bit. I'm not devaluing the documentation as well as I'm not devaluing the tests and the importance of that. I'm just saying that if you force people, it may bring in negative results, and there is no easy answer to what you suggested, to what I'm saying. And I'm not devaluing that. It's just, it's not easy, and we all know that, and that's why I'm bringing this up for discussion.
I mean, I totally agree that it's great to have it in the definition of done, but I agree with Nola that you have to have a common, middle ground, because sometimes, I mean, it's not developers who are unhappy, it's the product manager who is not happy. I mean, they want the features delivered right away without documentation. because like they may have a promise to their customers, so there are sacrifices. But it's good to have that the rule in the definition of done as a general practice, but allows for exceptions. Maybe that's good.
Felix, do you write the docs yourself, or do you? I mean, you do have the docs writer, right?
Yeah, I'm still writing a lot of the docs together with my colleagues in DevRel. But what I saw over time, we started writing the docs and we gave best practices. Now, more and more of our developers pick up writing the docs for their features because they actually see it also as a way to validate their feature. Because if you develop a feature and then you write your docs, you actually realize I missed something, or this is maybe unclear, or when it takes 10 steps to explain a feature, maybe I should work on the UX of that feature. So I agree. It always needs to be there need to be a way to exception. If we need to ship something quickly, we ship it without documentation. But the default case should be we ship it with documentation, and then if it's not necessary, we can see why. And I think that enforces a mindset which in the end will improve everybody. Because if you develop a technology and it is not documented, it becomes useless in most of the cases.
It should be an interactive process. And I think it requires like few rounds of iteration as well, as you mentioned. I mean, when you write for installation that takes maybe half an hour or an hour, maybe you could think about how to simplify the installation process.
You all know, I guess, that I have been advocating heavily for including videos in documentation. And what do you think about that? And obviously, I mean, video is not searchable. Video is hard to maintain, as hard as static pictures, sometimes harder. And you know all the other drawbacks of having videos in the documentation. But still, it has also lots of reasons to still do that. And the format that I enjoyed a lot while I was at King, that before, like, I would just sit down together with a developer and discuss immediate user problems with him or her about a particular feature or set of features. And this would be 20, maybe 30 minutes video, sometimes shorter. And it would be useful and different information that very hard to put into documentation, because there's lots of what if user does like that, then what? Also, visual information helps. So again, this long question of mine is following. Do you believe in videos as a part of documentation, maybe alternative, maybe something similar?
I'm actually can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah. So I think video is really useful. It's great. But as you mentioned, there are many shortcomings. For example, you can't like really search for it. But if we can solve that problem, that would be great, because it's really visual. It has visualization, or can I say like a visualized instruction, really is the most convenient and easiest for users to use. But again, it has another shortcoming that we have to consider. See the shortcomings is the for people who cannot really hear, or for people who cannot really watch. So what can we do? Is there another alternative text actually developed for that video? Is that possible? Because for images we can do that. I don't. If it's not possible, can we do? Can we have the video like formatted as GIF in a way?
As GIF, but that's like few minutes maximum. What are your? It takes as much, from my experience, it takes equally much or efforts to make a 30 minutes video and to make like few minutes video. So I'm not sure.
For me, it depends on the information you want to transmit. As a developer, I hate videos in documentation, especially the videos where somebody films himself coding in an IDE. It's just useless. And I see that way too often. Where I see the value is if you have, like in our internal engine, we also have artists as our audience. And showing artists videos how to do something in a software works quite well because they see how to interact with the user interface and it's a more natural environment for them. But for developers, I always value text. What we do in our training material is we mix it. So at the beginning of the training, we have a, let's say, 2 or 3 minute clip of me or somebody else introducing the topic, what we're going to train, and then maybe give some generic information, a small presentation, what we're going to do. But then all the important things is text. Because as you said, it is searchable. It's easier to update. One of the big problems we're going to face soon is we're releasing a new version of our software with a completely new interface. And we have, let's say, 40 hours of training material on videos. Basically, would have to re-record all of them to keep them up to date, which is a lot of effort. It's easier in text to update screenshots. So for me, it depends on the audience. But what I think is always important, what a lot of conferences do, they have a transcript of the video. So even people who can't watch the video can at least read it. And if the transcript had time markers, you can also search it and then jump to it, which is something.
Yeah, there are things you can do to make videos more accessible. Different people learn better by different ways. I really like to have text. If you then want to record a video of, working through a tutorial, sometimes it can just really unblock you to see someone do it or see someone debug something. If it's a key skill, I like that, 3 minutes, nothing else. And that's why developers hate video. It's because we don't want to watch 90 minutes of Ramblecast, which might be what I was doing before I joined this meeting, but we'll skate over that. If it's a key skill, then, yes, by all means, make it available as a video or as a screen recording, but there should be a written version first. People can use that and they can walk through the video. Someone on my team at the moment is doing a really nice format where she picks tutorials that we already have on our documentation site or on our blog, and she kidnaps the author and gets them on her stream, and together they build the thing. So someone kind of talks her through it. She asks lots of questions. There's people in the chat saying, I haven't seen Netlify before. How do you do this? Where are the logs? And I like that format, but I only like it because the tutorial exists. All those tutorials have code on GitHub. They all have README setups. We can refer back to it. They can tweet questions at us if they watch the video in a month. We're not doing transcripts. I would like us to, but it's Twitch, so the videos don't live for a long time. We haven't done that yet. But we're looking at starting to pull out the best clips and make them available. So I think there's space for video content, but it should not replace anything that we are already doing. In the same way that good API reference documentation will never replace your tutorial, or vice versa, and then so the video will never replace the pros that we already have, but it can be amazing as a different way of getting into the same content, and especially to show awareness. You can do a cool thing. When you actually want to do the cool thing, you're not going to come watch the video of me doing the thing. You're going to read the docs on how to do the thing, but you know about the thing because you saw me do it on video.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's awareness. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of the content. It really depends on scenarios, and then you decide how you communicate it.
I have too much quarantined facial hair on me, so you cannot see me smiling, Lorna. Since what you have been saying is basically the way, like, I'm the biggest advocate for video being appealing to the younger audience. And the format that you have just talked about is exactly appealing to the younger audience, since the developers, like the users of whatever we advocate for, whatever software SDK tool that we represent, they're getting younger and younger and younger. And videos is how they see the world.
I also think it is more of an early stage thing. So it's not really years in chronology, it's years in experience with this thing. So I think the video is a real good hand holder when you're completely new to a thing, you don't know how anything works. Now I'm quite experienced, I just want to read the reference docs. Like, boom.
Yeah, that also.
It's like, don't give me the preamble, I'm in. But when I'm not sure if I can do this thing, the video really kind of boosts me and shows me, hey, this is really achievable. And so it's not just a youth millennial media thing. Like they've grown up with bandwidth, and I grew up with library books. But it's also you need different information at different stages of your relationship with the thing that is the content. I think.
That's also for me one of the hardest part of documentation. How can I create a good documentation, especially good documentation space and landing page for people with different experience levels of the software? Compared like to beginner, they want hand-holding guides. Experts just want the API documentation and maybe some best practices from the field. And combining those is always tricky.
It's a really hard problem. I give a talk about this called GitHub is your landing page. And it's really hard. And I tend to go for more detail is always better, because you don't become an experienced developer without becoming an experienced skit reader. So they just find the pieces they need. I'll try and send you the link to the video. I think it's published from DevRel.con London, and also API the Docs in Amsterdam.
Yes, here's this video.
Thanks.
And it's a great one, and however, the content of, like, that's the last bit from me. The content of the context of this sudden video discussion was that I felt it was easier for me to grab a developer and have some topic recorded on the video and give it immediately, make it immediately available to our users, than squeeze out the piece of documentation out of a developer. So do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in what you have been doing is like interviewing the developers for you to have a efficient and productive content out of the video. Maybe for you, maybe you have to, I guess you have prepared like the interview script, right? Like the questionnaire that you prepare to ask. I mean, that's your design of writing as well. But if you find out that the result of the video recording is not very pleasant, maybe it's not very satisfying, then you need to have another way to communicate the content. So you can use that video as a source of information. That's just my like understanding and how I would use the video.
If that is all, I mean, it's time for final remarks and just stop and say goodbye to each other. Any final remarks? Anybody in this nice chat?
Please, I think Felix and Lola, I think you are really great advocates and evangelists for developers. And could you also like try a little bit more on technical writers? So, advocate our collaboration. I think you are doing a really great job. I mean, it seems like you have really helping developers a lot already.
I think I am a developer.
You are, yes.
I just want to close and say I absolutely love that we ran this meetup at this sort of joining of such important topics, and I really enjoyed chatting with you all today. So thanks.
Yeah, same for me. It was a nice fun, and I learned something new, and I found some new web pages I'm going to look at. And I'm going to take a look at the Google Tech Writing course and maybe send it to all our developers with, do this, please.
Yay.
Cool.
and then give them sweets for finishing.
That's good. Good tip.
Send them to their homes.
Always sweets.
Send them to their homes, like, a small letterbox, and there's like single small piece of chocolate. It's like, why not?
Nice surprise.
Cool. But I want to thank you once again. I want to thank our audience who has been cut by Facebook from watching the, the final part, the culmination of all this video. But it is on the recording. And see everybody who cares about that in 2 weeks where we're going to discuss about becoming a better speaker. So thank you and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.